I turned 18, he took me out and got me drunk. We ended up sitting on the corner of his house, both puking our guts on us. He goes, "This wasn't really fun, was it? Remember that next time we want to do it." He taught me his golden rule. And that's what it's all about. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And I use that example time and time again. Don't care what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are. The only thing that's important is how you treat me and how I treat you. And that's the bottom line.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rise and Grind, the Thurl Bailey podcast. I'm your host, Thurl Bailey. And you know, there's some people you meet in life who don't just build success, they build impact. And every once in a while, you come across someone whose story reminds you that where you start doesn't have to define where you finish. Today's guest is one of those people for me. I first got to know him through a simple charity event. What was supposed to be a small basketball clinic turned into something much bigger, because that's just how he operates. He doesn't think small. He doesn't do just enough. His new book is called Extraordinary Adventures of an Ordinary Man. And I'll tell you right now, there's nothing ordinary about the way this man has lived his life. Born in Buffalo, New York, and graduating, as he'll tell you, from the School of Hard Knocks, John Gullo is by definition a self-made man. He's intensely proud of his Sicilian heritage while at the same time as gentle as they come. What began as long hours of work in the grocery store and then a start at Burger King, John ultimately owned more than 55 Burger King restaurants. His financial success benefited his family, but more so hundreds and thousands of others, from those at Youth Impact to the Treehouse Museum, those who enjoyed Ogden, Utah's 4th of July celebrations, homes to benefit children, and a monument to first responders. John Gullo is all that and more, with a love for pickleball, which we'll dive into, which eventually landed him in the Pickleball Hall of Fame. Of all things. John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Welcome, Thurl. Great to be with you. A long-lasting relationship. And, in regards to this book, you realize that first activity had a lot to do with me in my career. That was the first charitable thing I did with the American Dream Foundation, was Youth Impact. And I learned so much from you when you came up there that day. Let me share with the people listening. I bought a package of Thurl Bailey, spending a night with 15 kids teaching how to play basketball. Well, we did it with Youth Impact in Ogden, and there was 150 kids. But the basketball piece wasn't that special. It was afterwards, he gave the greatest talk to the kids. And what it zeroed in on is what I believe in, what he believes in. We're a product of our environment, what we grow up in. And then the reason that's so important is because your environments are different, but what we both had was great parents that led us through all of the stuff. I know I got in trouble, but
No.
we
Yeah, we'll talk about some of that trouble.
Okay. But it was really interesting how it happened. I formed my foundation, and I wanted to do a charity event. So I came up with an idea of an evening of Christmas giving. And I worked it with the Bank of Utah, and they said to me, well, let's raise money for Christmas Box House. I didn't know what Christmas Box House was. I didn't know Richard Paul Evans was. And I said, okay. And then the next thing I knew, Richard Paul Evans invited me to a fundraiser that he was having big in Salt Lake City. So I had to take the time to actually read his book to find out what it was all about. And we went down to the fundraiser, Little America. He sat me at his table, which was with Kenny Loggins and a bunch of other stars. And I learned about his program and got actively involved with his. But there was this silent auction thing with Thurl Bailey. And of course, being a jazz fan, that meant something to me. But that was how we met. That's how we got together through that whole one thing. But listening to you talk to the kids, telling them, sharing them your life story, that's what really turned me on. And I ultimately produced a video for Youth Impact to promote and raise money, and Thurl graciously became part of that video.
Well, John, I appreciate that. It's you changed my life too. It was and there's so many things that obviously we've done together. But let's talk about your book. I was graciously honored to be able to do the forward in your book. And again, for listeners, the name of the book is Extraordinary Adventures of an Ordinary Man. In that forward, I talk about responsibility. But from your perspective, when did you first realize that your life might matter to other people?
I've been asked it a lot of questions, times, and why did I write the book? I consider myself to be humble in many ways, but I was asked one time to give a talk to 800 IRS employees, and the topic was the power of one, service. And ever since I was poor, and I was really poor at one time, giving always meant a lot to me. When you have nothing, giving is really important because you don't have anything to give. And I remember as a third, fourth grader saving my pennies to buy my parents' Christmas presents. So I gave this talk in the IRS, and it essentially was my life story. And then I was at a function with another artist, and if you've met her, Tara Cameron, and there was a lady there was an author, publisher, and she asked me, people have told me I should write my life story. So I sent her a copy of that 44-minute speech, and she sent it back to me and said, no, I not only want to publish this book, I want to write it with you. Unfortunately, COVID hit in the middle of it, and things got out of whack, and we fell behind. And I ended up with Bridget Cook being my co-author, and she's a Times bestseller. But it was just really interesting going back and trying to remember and all the things in your past. I was successful, but I was never motivated by money. You're a player, you're a contract. Contracts are big, but at the end of the game, playing the game, participating, sharing. That's what I got out of your talks when we first met, and that's really me. I was asked one time what I want my legacy to be. And I said, if I help one person and that person remembers, it's all been worthwhile. And that's always been my goal, just to share. And in writing this book, what I did after each chapter was put life lessons.
I love it. Well, let's jump in the time machine, John. Let's go back because you paint such a vivid picture of growing up in Buffalo, New York. Wise guys on one side and faith on the other. How did that environment shape the man that you would become?
Well, as I say with my grandkids, you learn more in life what not to do than you learn what to do. And of course, back in that environment, I had a lot of what not to do's. Then had some great role models at that time. I grew up, my mother and father divorced early, and my real father, in my opinion, he came into my life at 15. And he taught me about honesty and respect. And I want to share that story right now. Here's a guy, 44 years old, never had any kids, marries my mother. I'm a 15-year-old leather jacket, greaseball, kind of kid. And he had the first MG coupe on the East Coast. And then he get married, he buys an Austin Healey 3000 with little jump seats in the back seat for me. And one day, 3 or 4 months after they're married, they're going to go out partying with my brother. My brother had a cabin cruiser. And back in those days, they weren't on trailers, they were on pontoons. And he parked the car in front of it. And he went out partying with my brother and sister-in-law. Well, you know what happens then? The phone rings. Hey, come on over, party time, right? And as that got, then, well, now it's time to show off. So I go out and I get in the car. I put it in second gear instead of reverse. I rev it up and I drive it under the boat. Then you find out your friends leave really quickly. And, My father came home that night, 3 sheets to the wind, told him what I did, and he didn't say anything. And 2 weeks later, he sat me down. He says, "You realize what you did?" I said, "Well, yeah, I took the car, I smashed it up." He says, "No, let me explain something to you, son. When you're born, we got a name. It's a good name. It's what you do with that name that's important. Now, you've lost my trust. You have to know the impact of losing my trust on your name." And it clicked. Then he said, "Punish yourself." And I paid to fix the car, and I didn't drive until I was 18. But respect is what came out of it. My name, and through my life, everything I've done, that's the thing that's most important to me is the word respect. And that goes back to our relationship, man. I respected you so much just listening to that day, telling you your story about how when your high school days, how you were the great basketball player as a junior in high school, and how you developed. And I shared with you our lives 20 years apart paralleled each other so much, different avenues, but so much parity. My first marriage, your marriage. I joke for the benefit of the crowd here. He says Thurl really had it made because he grew up in the ghetto. When I was 20 years younger, I grew up in the slums. Slums was kind of bad.
You described your role models in Buffalo as guys with flash, dash, and cash. Did you ever feel pulled toward that kind of life? And how close did you get to being pulled that way?
My brother was closer to it. And we were involved in business for a while, and I was kind of guilt by association. He dealt with a lot of stolen stuff as we were building our restaurants and different things, and I just kind of blew it off. But the one thing that happened, and he was getting divorced, and his wife called in and reported interest in using stolen product, and they raided our restaurants, and yep, there it was. And then 3 days later, he said, "Come on, let's go up to this restaurant." No, we're not. I'm only 21 years old, and we're having lunch with this guy, and envelope goes under the table, and I don't know. 3 days later, the Buffalo businessman falsely accused. That's how corrupt it was. It was that simple. As time went on, as we were doing the book, my brother never had a father, and he continued to be somewhat grade. Is that a good word? Whereas Red coming into my life at 15, right, and that example he made there, it changed my life. It really did. When I turned 18, he took me out and got me drunk. We ended up sitting on a corner of the house, both puking our guts on us. He goes, "This wasn't really fun, was it? Remember that next time we want to do it." He never graduated from high school, grade school. He was a hobo for some time. What I really like sharing with it as an agnostic, he was the most religious man I ever knew the Bible in and out, but he was against brick and mortar. And there's a saying in the book that I won't repeat right now, but he taught me his golden rule. And that's what it's all about. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And I use that example time and time again. Don't care what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are. The only thing that's important is how you treat me and how I treat you. And that's the bottom line.
John, you've got a powerful theme in your story about not having a father around. How did that absence affect your identity growing up?
Well, you're searching. I had 4 older sisters who were really older than me, and they kind of spoiled me, but then they were gone, and then I'm alone, and all of a sudden I'm out there trying to figure out what's the sound, looking for love in all the wrong places. Trying to find my identity, moving from group to group, doing things that are in the book that I guess the lucky thing about me most is when I did stuff that was wrong, I was never caught. But if you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, that neighborhood, that's what I grew up with. The Irishman is another movie. That's how my brother made all his money. When I saw that movie, and my brother worked for a slaughterhouse, and they would black market beef on the truck. And I said, "Here, I'm watching this movie this years later." I remember my brother doing that. But it was part of life. You didn't view it as crime. It was just the way it was. It was business. It was just really interesting to grow up. But my father was the turning point. I say, no, you show me that wise, cocky ass kid, and I'll show you a leader. It's up to me to harness that leadership. And if this country has a problem at all today, is the leadership. Who do you turn to? And the way multimedia works today, no matter who you are, you get destroyed.
Well, you talked about not getting caught, but I mean, you were honest. You're honest in your book about getting into trouble, stealing, joyriding, hustling. Was there a moment where you realized if I keep going this way, things aren't going to end well?
I guess it was when I was in sixth grade and we decided to ink the school, and we got caught. We had to clean up, and I'm just saying,
Oh, so you did get caught.
yeah, I got caught for that. Yeah, that was it. But it was really later on in life, the turning point was when I joined the JCs. Believe it or not, I was an introvert at 20 years old. I was a follower. I wasn't the gang leader. I was the guy in the background. When I learned that JC creed, we believe that faith in God gives meaning and purpose to human life, that the brotherhood of man transcends the sovereignty of nations, that economic justice can best be won by free men through free enterprise, that government should be laws rather than men, and that Earth's great treasure lies in human personality. That last one really meant a lot to me, because now in business, you have to deal with human relations. And you have to have people that work for you, that motivate you, that you might not normally socialize. And that's what I learned in that organization. How do I get people to work on a civic project that have talent that I don't really like? I have to motivate them to do the job. The life experiences I've had through all of those types of situations is really what molded me.
Well, let's move to some of your philosophies, some of the things that you really believe in. You say leadership means innovation. What does that actually look like day to day for a businessman, a guy like you running a business?
Back in 1987, I was at Burger King conference. A guy by Don Beveridge was a speaker. And he got up there and he said, the minute you think you're in a Burger King business, you're going to fail. The minute you think you're not a sales business, you're going to fail. What he listened about for, you're going to fail. He says, get this in your gut. You're there to meet and satisfy your customers' needs profitably. And that hit me. And we're talking, this is before cell phones. I went back and I put credit card only phones in my throughway locations. I put free shoe buffers inside of my downtown locations, creating that dining experience, even in the fast food business. People can hurt you more than they can help you. I always say the worst complaint is the one you never get. And the biggest problem most businessmen have when things get tough is they minimize their losses. What I learned coming out of that is the time to spend on money is when you're not making it. When you got to do the extra stuff, when you got to do those things that might not necessarily float down the bottom line. But I worked for Tops Market, you mentioned in the beginning. They were a phenomenal grocery chain, startup company. And I really believe 30% of their business was loyalty, not because they had good food, good product, good service. And in my discussions with my managers, I said, the one thing our competitors can't say is we're a better person. So that is when I started doing a lot of my community stuff within Burger King, being a good citizen, because your competitor can't say I'm a better guy.
Powerful. So let's talk about personality wise. You've been described as tough, direct, and not sugarcoating things. So how do you balance that with building loyalty in people?
In the book, when I was researching my Burger King, I promoted a guy into restaurant management. And he ended up when I became franchise district manager for Burger King, I would send franchisees to his restaurant because it was just starting then. And he ended up becoming vice president of operations at Burger King. And I ended up becoming a franchisee. Then there's a presidential change. He was terminated. And after his non-compete, he became president of Wendy's. And when Bridget's interviewed him, he says, let me explain something. John was older than us, and he really mentored us. And here I am years later working for Dave Thomas, the guy that formed Wendy's. And I go to him with a problem, and he gives me the same answer John gave me when I worked for him. And she goes, what's that? just do it right. It's that simple. Do it right. I mean, I pray a lot. I use that as the essence of everything that I do. I prayed about this today. Okay. I believe in God, and God has spirited me in many, many ways. And I'm very thankful for my faith in Him.
Well, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with John Gullo and talk about more about his purpose in giving back, but also some other things that he's been involved in. Pickleball, the least of these things. Talk about his spirituality. And we'll talk about Mexico. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Hey guys, time out. You give your best to your work, your family, and your responsibilities. But to keep showing up strong, you've got to stay dialed in. At Game Day Men's Health, the nation's leading men's clinic, they help you get back in the game with a custom game plan built around your labs, your goals, and your performance. Testosterone, peptides, real optimization. Come in today for a free testosterone test and consult. Tell them Big T sent you, and you get 50% off your first year membership. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Victory starts within. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rise and Grind. Thurl Bailey here. We're talking to a good friend, philanthropist, businessman, John Gullo. His new book, about to be released, Extraordinary Adventures of an Ordinary Man. John, I want to continue our discussion about some things that I really got out of the book. You talked about turning grit into generosity. That's pretty powerful. When people look back on your life, and you probably in part answered this a little bit, people look back on your life, what do you hope they say mattered most?
My honesty, my love of my fellow man. I say something about you that I hope I'll give you a plug. I says, I've been around a lot of athletes, had a lot of partners that have been great athletes, and they're as good as their last win. Thurl Bailey continues to win every game, and his name is there, and he's going to be there forever because he's touchable. And that's when you're in your position, it's hard to be touchable, even in my case. So, care, truly, if people know, what I say with kids know that you're telling the truth. When I had my restaurants, I always say you got to lose the suit. So when I would check my restaurants, I would jump on my Harley with my Harley leathers, and I would pull up the restaurant. And the kids automatically would talk to me because that was cool, right?
Yeah.
I use it a lot. Lose the suit when you're dealing with kids. That's important to me. I was asked just recently, how did I be using the word extraordinary? I don't think you can work at being extraordinary. I think it happens. I think God gives us challenges, and what we do is challenge. In church, my favorite song is Because I Was Given Much, I Too Must Give. And I live that every day. I mean, and it's tough to give because you got to find the right place to give and the right place to do. But I've been really so successful. The Treehouse Museum, Great American Freedom Trail, every fifth grader in northern Utah as part of their American history go there. We have the Oval Office where they sit at the president's desk, and they'll give them like the Amber Alert bill to sign, so they know what it's like to sign a bill that they understand. We reduplicated a printing press and they get a printed copy of the Declaration of Independence with John Hancock, and then they have a quilt pen. They get to sign that and take it home. We don't deal with socialism as much as we used to. I was on the school board, and that was a real problem for me because we learn from history. And
Right.
There's a lot of great history out there. We've had problems in the past, but like I said, you learn more what not to do than you do what to do. And you learn from the not to do's. You don't so much from the to do's.
Well, one of the things that you didn't just do was build businesses. You built impact through the American Dream Foundation. And it seemed to me that giving back was not an afterthought for you. It was a priority, and still seems that way today.
Well, money's never been important to me. I didn't get into the business to make money. I had a great job. I was one of the original franchise district managers of Burger King when they first started franchising. My next promotion was to corporate headquarters. I knew I couldn't spend half the time covering my butt the other half doing my job. And a guy asked me if I wanted to become a franchisee, and I said yes. So we only met for 8 hours, but we clicked. He was my financial partner. Then that weekend, I'm playing with my boys. I pop a wheelie on a 20-inch bike, turn my ankle 180 degrees, and on Monday morning, I get a phone call. We got an opportunity for you in Logan, Utah. I had never been west of Chicago, and I'm in a full A cast, and I can't go there. And I made the decision, move my family from Buffalo, New York to Utah, sight unseen. I can't put this up. I really believe God's on my side. He's given me the talents he's given me, and he watches what I do with it, and he's going to judge me based on what I've done with the talents he's given me.
Well, you've reinvented yourself multiple times, business, philanthropy, and John, even pickleball. And I have to say that you introduced me to the sport. I had really never heard of it. You know, you're talking about a former professional basketball player going into this sport that he hadn't heard of, but you look where it is today. And I don't know if they call you the godfather of pickleball. I know you're in the Pickleball Hall of Fame. How did that come about, John?
Well, my partner that backed me financially formed the National Football League Players Association before it was a union. I get involved with pickleball, and I turn to some people and says, is the sport ready for professional pickleball? And we invited 35 of the best players in the country at that time. They were talking 2011, 12. And I put up an $18,000 prize for my own money as a test. It went over. And the tournament champions came about. So professional pickleball started in Ogden, Utah. I'm the father of professional pickleball.
Didn't I beat you once in a game of pickleball?
I don't remember losing.
No, hey, trust me, I know I did. I just wanted to see what your answer was going to be, but no.
I'll tell you the interesting thing, and of course, I just had to do it. But remember, it started in Utah. There was this girl, Anna Lee Waters, 11 years old in my tournament, came in one gold with her mother. Okay, she's now the top female player in the United States.
Wow.
She just got signed by Nike. You know what that means.
Yes.
This girl's got her own Provo motorhome where she goes from tournament to tournament. She's playing with Agassi and who's crossed over from tennis. And it all started with me. I mean, I take a lot of pride in that. All the original people were there. And then a year ago, I ended up becoming the president of the Pickleball Hall of Fame. And it's about branding. In other words, a lot of people just don't know. So I took over the job in order to help put it on the map. It saved my life. That when I went to a Burger King thing, I was 30 yards from shore. I had congestive heart failure in the water, weighed over 300 pounds, and survived. Got back to Utah, had 6 bypasses, and I kept seeing this sign, pickleball. And I went out to play. And it's not a treadmill. It's not all that boring shit. You're bending, you're stretching, you're doing this. And I lost 6 bowling balls playing pickleball. I weigh 217 pounds now compared to 215, 16 at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember in my 83rd year, I still play 3 times a week because you can't let the old man in. You got to stay active. And as an athlete, the hardest part you got is you've got this finely tuned body that's used to producing, and then you retire, and all of a sudden that heart's still pumping. And you got to be aware of it. But I advocate the health of the sport more than anything else. In fact, I stole in Harley Davidson. They got ride to live, live to ride, and I use play to live, live to play. And it's been a great sport. I've just seen it grow. It's international now. I went to Spain and got to go in Spain. Try teaching pickleball. People can't speak English.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to kind of follow you through that journey, and I was in the room where it happened in the beginning. So that's an honor. So, okay, what are you chasing now, John?
July 1st is my date. I hope to have everything in my life completely solidified. I just got remarried, and I've got a great wife, and it's time to put a 10-year plan. In fact, I joke with her. I've been married twice before for 22 years each time. I said, we got to be married for 23 years. That means you got to get me to 105. And we have a great life. And it's time. The philanthropy piece will be there. But, I'm a tremendous believer in teaching people how to fish and not. So, in other words, down here, there's this arts program for the Hispanic kids in Mexico in Crescent Moon. And I listened to the woman I was putting together, and I was so moved I gave her 15 grand to hire the teacher. But now I still give them money, but I don't sustain it. You with me? I got them up, I got them rolling, and that's pretty indicative of everything I do with the money that I spend. I like to get people going, get them started, and then just always be aware of something. And right now I'm in the process of, we just put on a major fundraiser because there's a big facility. Land was donated to create this big sports park for the local Mexican kids who had nothing. I mean, I identify with this community so well. And I put together a fundraiser with them last month. It's called a cow plop. We took the field and we put these 36-inch squares all over the place, and people bet that the square that they had for 50,000 pesos that the cow was going to plop in their square. It was a fun thing. The kids were there, and we're going to expand that next year. And I growing up with nothing, I like helping people find out what life is all about, and not as a gift, but showing them how they can do it for themselves.
I love it. So I'm gonna take you back to that kid in Buffalo. If you could go back and talk to that kid, hungry, searching, trying to belong, what would you tell him?
Well, it's interesting because one of the people that read my book, and his quotes on the cover, he called me up. He says, "John, reading this book, our generation, we learned so much because we had nothing. If young kids get to read this book the way I read the book and take it to life lessons, you may have the chance of impacting kids and what life is all about." We're so materialistic today that's not me. I mean, I just got married. It's the first time I had long pants on in a year. I mean, I live in shorts and t-shirts. I'm not a status person. So the kid back then would just say, it goes back to Red. Say what you have to say. Be honest. When I was with Burger King, a vice president came to me and said, my people have a problem with you. And I said, I say what I have to say. I say it to the person I want to say it to. And if I make a mistake, I say, I'm sorry. I kind of like me. Maybe your people got a problem. But then Don Belknap, the president of the school board, when he was interviewed, I think he said it up best, and you're going to laugh at this one. He said, the best way to describe John, he's got an animal's mind with a sailor's mouth. And that was a great quote. And then the other one that I'd like to mention is Mayor Godfrey, who had a lot to get me going when we created the 4th of July. And when he was interviewed, they say in order to be successful, you got to think out of the box. He says, God, I don't even know what a box is. And you've been with me long enough to know that's probably really describes me. I don't see walls. I see opportunities every place. And I bounce off of walls and turn a negative into a positive all the time.
So as we wind this down, John, for someone listening right now who feels ordinary, what would you tell them about building an extraordinary life?
Starts with your home. Be the best parent. And that's one of my goals of this book. Learn from my lessons. Be the best parent first, then be the best neighbor, and just keep adding on to that as you go along. You're not going to win everybody over, but respect. There's in a lot of the interviews, you'll see people, he's kind of rough, but he's warm. He's got a great heart. You got to understand that he comes across very strong. And that's probably from my New York upbringing. You had to fight for what you wanted. I mean, there was no being smooth back then. You had to be tough. And I still go back to set a good example for your children, set a good example for the kids around you, your family around you, the people you go to church with, the people you work with. Respect means everything to me. Love is a 4-letter word. Respect is the word that makes me grow.
Love it. You mentioned before that you and I both came from environments where we had to make it matter. What do you think separates the people who actually do from the ones who don't?
In my own opinion, I really believe it's a strong faith in God. My mom taught me God takes care of everybody in the end. We weren't an actively religious family from an organizational standpoint, but the belief in God was always there, and it is to this day. Um, I love the one thing that you taught me too. Remember we did the Hot Country Nights?
Oh, yeah.
And I turned to you and says, "What's with all these country singers? They're all like 5'4". And what did you say? Yeah, they all wanted to sing. I wanted to play. They all wanted to play basketball. I wanted to sing. Look what happened to me. And you're a great singer. You know that. Taking life as it comes, appreciating everything. In my book, for those people that remember Sid Caesar, he was at a dinner theater in Salt Lake City after he came out of rehab, and he was asked how did he do it. And he said, I realized it took the same amount of energy to laugh as it does to cry. The choice is mine. If I share anything with your audience tonight, it's that simple. It's really that simple. Choose to laugh. Take humor in your life. You know how I use humor with you all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah, you've got some, and I try to write most of the jokes you tell me down so I can retell them in the appropriate places. But you're very equipped with some great humor.
I have a fast mind. At one time, I asked my CPA, "Am I that smart, or are people that stupid?" And he said, "You have the unique ability of making something black and white quicker than anybody I've ever known. Somebody throws something at you, you can just cut through it all, and you figure it out, and you make your decisions." And that's probably why I'm at where I'm at today. I made my mistakes, but I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And when I was in my restaurant managers, I used to tell them there's positive mistakes and negative mistakes. A positive mistake is when you're trying to do something and it goes wrong. A negative mistake is when you don't do anything and it goes wrong. I can live with positive mistakes.
Well, the book is called Extraordinary Adventures of an Ordinary Man. It's been fun going on this journey with you, John. Thank you for sharing with our audience. I know your book's going to be a bestseller. I just want to say to our viewers and listeners out there that success isn't just about what you achieve. John is the epitome of that. It's about what you give back. And so this has been a great lesson for all of us to learn. John Gullo, thank you so much for sharing and being on the show with us.
And I don't know when this is going to air, but on Amazon on May 12th, $1.99 download. Those are the two big days to find out where this book's going to be. And we are promoting it internationally. I'm very humbled by it. I really am. The comments of the people that have read it, and they're there. They're in the book. I feel this is the best thing I've ever done.
Well, it's your legacy piece, John. It really is. And I've been blessed and grateful to be a part of that journey with you and to watch you from afar and watch all the things that you've impacted. You've taught me a lot in my life. You've helped me out of some very difficult situations. So I'm blessed to call you my friend, and you have impacted so many people and will continue to do so. So thank you again, my friend.
I like what you said at my 20th birthday. I'm your brother from another mother.
That's right. I love it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Rise and Grind, the Thurl Bailey podcast. We'll see you next time. Take care of each other.